Hey guys, what's up? So I just spent 26 minutes shooting a video about my fight with my dad, which is also going to be the title of this video. And as you can guess, I am scrapping that video because it's really hard to break this all down into like a 10-15 minute video, but honestly, who wants to watch a 26-minute video? I'll still upload it maybe if you guys want to, but I don't know, I would never do that to somebody. That's terrible. And I know you guys have other videos to watch too. I'm not the only vlogger you probably, whose videos that you watch, so, but anyway, I'm going to try to keep this one a lot shorter and not go into as much detail about at least how, I reacted to certain things. Anyway, let me get right into it. So what happened was, how did this all get triggered? Well, if you had seen my prior video, you know I went bowling on Saturday, and before we went bowling, my dad asked me, how are things going at CVS? Are you getting good hours? And I actually plan on lying to him because I'm not working at CVS. I never said I was, but I sort of implied that I will be in the future, because his fiance was sitting across from us and her daughter. So I kind of was like, oh yeah, they're giving me good hours, like, everything's fine. And then he said to me, don't blow smoke up my ass. And I understand why he does say that, because in the past, I was always so anxious about telling the truth about my issues and other things. And so I kind of said something to the effect like, I'm not working there right now. And he said, we're going to have a talk later. And I was like, whatever, fine. And it's not like I don't plan on working there. It's just sort of like I've been gun-shy about going back. Because when I worked there for the 13 months in the past, I was always so depressed. Honestly, I probably was never more suicidal back then than at any other point in my life. Hold on, I need to shut off my car, which is running for too long. And also because I honestly think to myself, what has really changed between when I stopped working at CVS and now? And I feel like nothing has. The brain fog is still there, the anxiety is still there. I've maybe gotten a little wiser, and I know how to manage my emotions better, but it's still, I'm afraid, to be honest. But I know I do have to work, and I kind of have a plan to better myself over the next month or so. I'm going to share that with you guys in another video. But, I kind of want to sort of focus on me for right now, and then once school starts, I can, do school and work and things like that. But anyway, so after bowling, we came back. My dad said, let's go in the office and talk. And so at first, we had like a 30-40 minute talk, and at first it was very, not cordial, but it was just like a regular talk back and forth. But things slowly began to escalate for various reasons that I'll get into. To the point where, by the end of it, we were both at each other's throats. I was yelling. I'm not like screaming, but I was yelling very stern, about some of the things I was saying. And I never get like that. I'm not the type of person to yell or get angry. It was so unlike me. And I can honestly say, I have not had more adrenaline flowing through me than those last few minutes, that I was, fighting with my dad. I probably had more adrenaline flowing than I've ever have in my entire life. That's how supercharged I was. And again, things started off fine, but as we kept talking and talking, I just felt, I could slowly feel the blood rushing through my veins. I could feel the anger building up inside of me. And even then, it took a while to build up. But by the end, I'll get into more specific detail about what happened, but at one point I yelled and I left the room, and I went to go sit down with his fiance and her daughter. And honestly, when I sat down, my hands were stayed shaking for about a good 5 or 10 minutes. That's how much adrenaline I had coursing through me. And honestly, for the last year or two, or even the last couple of years, I felt like an emotional zombie. Bad stuff has happened, stuff I should probably even cry about that I haven't. I almost feel like I can't even summon tears anymore. And yet, on this night, there was so much adrenaline coursing through me. I can't even, I'm sure some of you out there have experienced that before, but it was like my entire body was on fire. It was an unreal experience. But anyway, I want to get into what happened. So, this conversation is sort of going to be a microcosm for what a lot of people unfortunately think about those of us with social anxiety, with brain fog, with depression, some sort of misconceptions about about our issues. And I know I've probably gone into them in past videos a little bit, but I wanted to bring it up in context here. So at first, I was explaining why I wasn't working there. And again, I never said, like, I never plan to work, or I've given up, or, I just said I'm a little weary of it, or I'm a little leery of going back to CBS for, blank, blank, blank reasons. Of course, people walking by me, embarrassing, but whatever. And so, I almost forgot to say something I said in my 20-minute video. Let me just preface this by saying that about my father. I'm going to dedicate a whole video to my childhood and what happened with him and my mom, but let me just make clear, my dad is a very aggressive person. He always has to have things his way. When you're on his good side, when things are going fine, he's probably one of the best people you could be around. He's fun, he's caring, but when you don't agree with him or things don't go his way, he can be angry, he can be aggressive. He doesn't get violent, but he gets, like, as a kid, I was constantly punished. I had no self-esteem. Him and my mom were always fighting because they're polar opposites, to be honest. I mean, if you saw them together, you would know they probably should have never gotten married. But he was always fighting with her. I was always fighting with him. And the thing that probably defines him more than anything else, besides always needing to be right, is that he is a subconsciously ignorant person. And what I mean by that is the fact that he will always see things the way he sees it. He's not one of those people that are ignorant and, like, they know they're wrong, but they won't admit it, like a politician or something like that, just spewing BS. You can point to the sky. It could be blue, beautiful blue sky. You can point to it, say the sky's blue. He'll still think it's green no matter what you say. And I honestly just think it's like he's subconsciously delusional about things. No matter how black and white you spell things out, he will always see things his way, in his own perspective, and you cannot change him. It would honestly be less frustrating talking to a brick wall. And also, he's very manipulative in conversation that, my mom was always a bad arguer. And me too when I was younger, but as I grew older, I grew smarter. And he just had subtle ways of manipulating your own words to suit his own arguments. So by the time you got done with a 20 or 30-minute argument with him, you would actually think you were the one who was right. He's very good at that stuff. So that's just a little bit of background about him. But anyway, so at first, when we were talking about CBS, he said, like, it's okay, you hated your, first he was saying, I know you hated your coworkers and your boss, why are you going back there, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, first of all, I never said any of those things. And I made clear to him that it's because of the brain fog, the anxiety. It's not because I'm working at CBS. I could be working at Red Lobster. I could be working at Applebee's, and the same things would happen. It's just that my cognitive abilities, sometimes it's almost like I'm mentally retarded. No offense to mentally retarded people out there, but I'm just saying I'm just not able to function. But obviously he didn't understand it, as is going to be very apparent in this video. He would just, he really didn't understand, why I wasn't going out there. And one of the things he kept stressing was that, just try. It's all about effort. And he highlighted some things in my past where all you needed really was effort. For example, I used to be a pretty good runner in high school and cross country until I did get depressed. I was like one of the best on a team. I was at one point like ranked 5th in my high school out of like 650 kids in my graduating class. I was a black belt in karate, so I did have achievements that were effort related. But as I, point out to him, running, all you have to do is try and you'll get better. Karate, all you have to do is practice your techniques and you'll get better. I'm not in control of myself with these diseases, with the brain fog, with the anxiety. It doesn't matter how hard you try, how much you tried. If you just run head first into the things that are causing you problems, things will not get any better. I also want to apologize, by the way, if the lighting's kind of bad and the sun's kind of going down right now. Anyway, I just kept stressing that, and I'm like, you cannot just make this another challenge for me to overcome, because he kept saying that you've overcome so many challenges. I know you're strong. You've done so many things in the past, and I'm like, you don't understand. It's not about the challenge. I worked for CBS for 13 months. I didn't get any better. It's a disease. It's a disease, and I kept making that very clear. I explicitly told him what the symptoms were that made me so depressed, why I struggled. and all that stuff that I mentioned in prior videos. And so that was, one misconception he had. To top things off, he started talking about experiences in his life, things that were not even remotely related to my issues. For example, he grew up in the Bronx, bad neighborhood. If for those of you that don't know the Bronx, or who have heard about it, his dad was sort of like a drunk. They kicked him out of the house. They were sort of scared of him. Like, he'd try to come in to their house at night. He'd bang on the door, but he never really did anything to them. But I understand, tough childhood, tough neighborhood. And also they were pretty poor. It was like, I guess, a single mother and 4 or 5 kids. I understand that completely. But he didn't even choose to really focus on that. What he focused on, ironically enough, was being fat for 35 years. And I just want to make this very clear. I am not at all, I have no ill feelings toward overweight people, obese people. I know it's a very difficult thing that some of you struggle. If you're, you may be obese watching this video. I know it's a difficult thing that some struggle with. I know it's not just as black and white as to just say exercise or eat right. It's sort of, like these issues, it sort of takes over you. It becomes your entire life, the way you think, the way you act. And it really takes a wholesale life change to fix that. But my dad was saying, like, he was so miserable when he was fat. He couldn't do anything. And, he overcame it. Now listen to how he overcame it. So, I guess, 10 years ago or 11 years ago, doctor told him he had an enlarged heart, and he had a year to live if he didn't get skinny. Oh, which sucks, obviously. I'm not trying to minimize the significance of that, but he was like, you know what? He was worrying about it. He didn't know what to do. He heard the surgery wasn't 100% successful, even though it was pretty successful. And he said, you know what? I manned up. I got the surgery done, and he was fine. He became skinny. Now he's actually still in pretty good shape. But just think about that. You got the surgery and you were fine. There were no repercussions whatsoever. The only things that happened to him were that he has a scar left, and he can't eat nowhere near as much food as he used to, which is actually a blessing in disguise. But it's like he was equating that to, my struggles with this. Again, it's just another challenge to overcome. It's just something you need to get over. He also mentioned when he was a cop. He used to work for NYPD. And he was in this, a dark room with some guy with a gun. The guy ran into the next room, and he thought to himself, okay, this is like, a turning point here. Do I go into the next room and risk my life, or do I run away and say, you know what, I'm going to leave it to the backup, I'm not going to deal with this guy and risk myself? And he's like, you know what, I didn't chicken out, I did the right thing, and I went in the room, and I guess he caught the guy. And I'm like, again, that would be great if I just went to CVS, or I just went, studied for school, and all my problems go away. I would be thrilled. But it was just so incredulous to think that he was minimizing my issues and trying to compare it to, him being fat or him getting a surgery. He didn't even overcome being fat. He got surgery. He had a scapegoat. He had an easy way out. And it was just, and again, I wasn't nasty about it. I wasn't trying to minimize his own struggles with being fat and things like that. But I was like, you know what? You cannot relate the two issues. And he was like, yes, you can. I'm like, listen, I don't. And then I guess, in a way, I knew I was sort of implying, maybe his issues weren't as bad as mine, or his were very different, like they weren't on the same scale. And I wasn't trying to imply that, but naturally, you sort of think that. So he was sort of getting agitated by that. And I just said plain and simple, you know what? Look, I'm not going to pretend to understand, how it was for you growing up in the Bronx and being fat and having to struggle through that. But then, just like I can't understand what you went through, do not try to understand what I'm going through. Or to think that, you have the answers to it. And again, I guess that sort of implies, his issues may not be as bad, but whatever, even though I wasn't trying to imply that. And so, we both started getting more angry. Again, my adrenaline started to flow. And I'm trying to remember what else was said. So again, I had never been more honest with him in my life. I told him that I had been suicidal in the past. I had never mentioned the word suicide to my mom or my dad, ever. And I explained all my symptoms very clear. And he kept seeing things his own way. And it's almost like he was minimizing my issues, almost insulting me. And again, what started out as a cordial conversation naturally tended to devolve or evolve little by little to the point where we were sort of both, I guess, giving jabs at each other, even unintentionally. And by the end of it, we were sort of in a yelling match. And I'm not the type of person to yell, especially with his fiance and the daughter in another room. I would never do something like this in front of people, especially in a public place where you see people get nasty with each other. I am way too polite and way too nice to do something like that. This was so uncharacteristic of me, but he brings that out of me. He brings that anger and those emotions out of me. And honestly, again, I had never experienced emotions like this in a very, very long time. It was just... It's like as strange as it sounds, I almost want to feel it again just because it was like so unusual and so powerful. But, people parking next to me. Look, I'm shooting a video. Can you not pull up next to me? But anyway, so that was the fight me and my dad had. The last thing that we said to each other was, he was talking about, obviously at this point we were both at each other's throats, and he sort of took that next step to insult me by saying, you know what, I went through my 35 years and you've only been through 6, and I was like, I cut him off, and I'm like, how dare you imply that your 35 years of being fat are worse than my 6 years of going through this? And I stormed out of there. I didn't slam the door or anything. I just stormed out of there. And the funny thing is that he talks about, his life being so miserable. You know what? He wasn't that miserable when I was a kid. And not only that, he took out the anger and the emotions on me and my mom. He wasn't violent again or anything, but he was always mopey in a mood. And I'm like, you know what? It would have been different if you did the right thing by us. If you kept everything internalized and it's like, my dad was suffering silently. No, that's a load of crap. He was just, he was just like a not nice person, and he really, like, as much as I struggle now, even though I may take it out on my mom sometimes, I always try to, like, I even tell her if I'm in a bad mood, just avoid me. Just, like, I'm not in a good place right now. But it was just so ridiculous having this fight with my father. And again, I knew going in, it was like talking to a brick wall. I knew I was going to gain nothing out of this, but I told my mom, you know what? People don't change. Dad's just in a different situation now. He's still the same type of person on the inside. Especially if people that want to change, they're not going to change. And I'm like, you watch. One day, it's going to happen. Me or him are going to get into a big fight. And you know what? It's going to be whatever. I don't feel they need to appease him or to do what he says anymore. FYI, I live with my mom now. He lives with his fiance. So, obviously, my parents are divorced. And I don't live with him. So, we've been able to avoid this type of fight for many years. We actually stopped talking for a year or two, and I sort of was the bigger person, let him back in, even though I didn't forgive him. But we had, he had, I guess, been pretty careful around me, and I guess it was only a matter of time before we reached this boiling point. But it really was insulting to just, not only for him to sort of imply like my issues don't exist or that they're so trivial, but to for him to apply that he understands. That to me, like, you know what? If you don't understand, or if you don't think you understand, don't try to understand something. So you don't have to understand. I told him halfway through our fight, and I told his fiance too, I don't blame you for not understanding. I don't blame anyone for not understanding. I just, I blame you right now for fighting with me and forcing me to see things your way. Like it's a matter of effort, and it's a matter of me being scared. And I admitted to him, he sees everything as like, I've given up. I'm not trying. I'm scared. You know what? I admit I'm scared. I admit that there are some things I am avoiding. But I also admit, you know what? I am open-minded. But yet, I'm still going to stick to my guns. I'm not going to cave into the advice of my therapist or my dad or my mom. Because you know what? They really don't understand. And there is a very fine line between being too open and taking someone's advice when you necessarily shouldn't take their advice. And I think I'm a very open person. It's not like I wasn't listening to my father during this whole time. It's just that he wasn't right. And the funny thing is, and I'll end the video with this, is that at the end of our little fight, so I stormed out of the room. I sat with the fiance. I was totally embarrassed. And my adrenaline was still flowing so much. I thought I was going to cry. I never cry in front of everybody. I never show my emotions. I'm usually the best of anyone at putting on a smile and faking it. But, like, I was so emotional that it was all coming out. But luckily, I did not cry. But whatever. So I was getting ready to leave. She said, your dad's lying down. You could talk to him if you want to say goodbye. And I did. And he was calm again. We had another talk. But it was really just him giving a 30-minute speech. And the funny thing is that, you know what? That entire fight we had, that entire 30, 40 minutes that we had that conversation, he didn't pick up a single thing from that. He did not open his mind to anything I said. Case in point, when he was giving me that speech, he said, you know what, if you don't want to work at CBS, that's fine. If you don't like the people there, you can work at Applebee's, you can work wherever else, and just, you know, I know you're strong and better than this. And I'm like, you didn't get a damn thing out of our conversation, did you? And I'm like, you know what? I'm used to having fought with my dad in the past. I'm used to him being impossible. I went home and talked to my mom about it. I wasn't, you know, traumatized or beside myself. I was like, you know what, whatever. I am so past that. So, but anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. I'm shaved off 5 minutes, so I'm pretty happy about that. Again, sorry, it is still a little bit long, 21 minutes and counting, but, you know, yeah, I understand a lot of you guys also out there probably have people who just don't understand, and sometimes people, it's better just for that they don't understand, or that they don't pretend to. Sometimes that just makes things all the more frustrating, so, again, thank you guys for watching, and again, thank you for you guys who have been commenting and inboxing me and just supporting me this entire time. I do appreciate it, so thank you for that.